Okay, so I'm in a crawl space that we're working on in Loudon, Tennessee. If you aren't familiar, it's the Tellico Village area. We got two of the guys here working. We got Tyler and Robert taking care of this situation. A couple weeks ago, they came out here and installed the dehu and the active ventilation system, as well as sealed the vents. And now they just finished applying a disinfectant to the joists. As you can see, the joists aren't that bad. They look pretty good as far as no mold and things like that. But one of the two unique things that the homeowner asked us to do here, and which isn't common practice for us to do, but they wanted us to do this and we obliged, was they wanted to keep the insulation. The old fiberglass is kept up, and then we just applied a disinfectant to the exposed wood. Now, the downside to this is if there is anything behind the fiberglass, obviously the disinfectant cannot reach those areas. But as you can see, this wood looks pretty good. So the chance of there being any mold behind the insulation is not that great. As in fact, if there is, it may be from an old leak of the toilet or something like that. But apparently the humidity of the crawl space didn't really affect this this crawl space that much. The other thing is that we're putting up foam board with insulation. Now, according to building code, you can do either or. You don't have to have both. Now, in a open crawl space where you have the vents that are open, so they're not sealed, right? You can't put foam board, you can't put foundation insulation on an open crawl space because the air will actually is coming in, as you can see, and bypassing that foam board. So the air temperature is low even though you have foam board on an open insulation. So code requires that you have insulation between the joists. It can be fiberglass, it can be rock wool, you can spray foam up there, whatever that insulation is. But in a closed crawl space, which is what we just converted this crawl space to, or a conditioned crawl space or an encapsulated crawl space, you only have to do one or the other, or you could do both. So in a closed crawl space, you can do foam board, or you can do fiberglass between the joists or whatever your joist insulation is, or you can do both, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you feel like there's not a lot of mold and different things up here, then leave this insulation in place to be even more of an insulator in your crawl space. But if there is mold in the joist, if there is mold in the subfloor, then yank that stuff out, soda blast it if needed, and then at a minimum put either foam board or subfloor insulation back, or you could do both. If you've got the money and the budget that you want to do that, it can certainly be done. The other thing that the homeowner asked us to do was to leave the old vapor barrier. All right, so that way when we put our 12 mil vapor barrier on top of the old 6 mil, it actually gives them an 18 mil vapor barrier. And I'm not against that. Obviously, it's the homeowner's choice if they wanted us to do that. Just again, be cautious with things under the vapor barrier that could create some odors, okay? So if you don't have an active ventilation system installed in the crawl space, if you're one of these companies that seals up every vent and doesn't properly ventilate according to code, then you're gonna have maybe some smells rise up because you're trapping even more. This is a loose laid vapor barrier. It's not taped, it's not sealed, it's not applied to the foundation the way it's supposed to, because this was an open crawl space. So whenever we put our 12 mil vapor barrier down, all of the pillars will be taped and sealed. It'll be overlapped and taped and all that, right, Tyler? Is that what's going to happen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So anyway, you've got to make sure that you understand if you leave the old vapor barrier down and seal up all of these seams in order to properly encapsulate the crawl space, there is a potential of an odor building up. So make sure you have proper ventilation to address that odor. But it's nice to have a 6 mil and a 12 mil together, or some type of underlayment that helps the vapor barrier live longer, because you said this Crawlspace had a lot of rock and debris.
Yeah, it did have a lot of rock and debris. Even like half a cinder block is probably over there in the middle of the Crawlspace, just kind of poking up.
Right.
That's going to affect the plastic we lay, so I'm
Right.
going to have to remove that.
So where does that cinder block come from? The builders?